to vaccines. Millions of lives have been saved since the end of the 18th century by preventing and eliminating diseases such as smallpox, polio, and measles. The roles of vaccines is to train and prepare the body's defense, the immune system, to detect and fight selected viruses and bacteria. If the body is subsequently exposed to these pathogens, it's ready to destroy them immediately, thus preventing disease. Welcome to another episode of AXI Experts. I'm your host for today, Tanya Maxwell Major from the Paho, Bahamas office. Today, we are discussing vaccines. So share the stream with your loved ones, your family, your friends, your coworkers, and anyone who may have questions about the vaccines. You will get your answers live this afternoon. Today, we also want to highlight that it's International Youth Day around the world. This UN observation is very important in this day and time. And we want to remind our youth that you can be young and healthy and still can get COVID-19. So we encourage you and everyone everywhere to do your part. Wash your hands, wear your mask covering your nose and your mouth, sanitize frequently, and of course, maintain your distance. Everyone everywhere can help end COVID-19. And as we talk about COVID-19 today, I want to welcome our guest. So help me welcome our guest, Dr. Lucia Oliveira. Please correct me if I got it. Please feel free to correct me if I mispronounced it. And we have Dr. Marguerite Gazzelli. Please say welcome. Please say hello to the audience.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Lucia, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Tanya, for this opportunity, and we are very excited to be here.
Thank you both, and indeed it's a pleasure to have you both. We know that you have so much to share with us to help us to do our part to help to curb COVID-19. All right, so let's begin with our question. Dr. Lucia, are vaccines effective against the Delta variant?
Very nice question, Tanya. Well, the vaccines that you have nowadays have shown in the studies that you have that, yes, they work very well with the Delta variant. We know that the Delta variant is much more, it's higher transmissible, but the vaccines that you have are working very well, especially against hospitalizations and severe disease and death, which are the most important events that you want to prevent with the vaccines.
Thank you. And can children be vaccinated? Dr. Margarita?
Thank you. No, another excellent question, and one that I'm sure many of our listeners are interested in. That children can be affected by COVID-19. Yes, we've seen this since the start of the pandemic. However, we've also seen since the start of the pandemic that children have fewer symptoms, fewer of them advance to severe disease. So while we're not saying that children are immune from COVID-19, we're saying that their outcomes from this disease tend to be much milder than for adults. At this time, there's only one vaccine that has been approved for adolescents, so persons 12 years or older. There are no vaccines for children younger than 12. There are other vaccines that are currently being assessed for adolescents, but right now Pfizer is the only one. And this is not because we don't value children or we don't think that they need the vaccine. It's simply that other people in the populations, the elderly, healthcare workers, people with different comorbidities need vaccines sooner because they are at higher risk of severe disease and death. So once those groups have been fully vaccinated, then we can talk about expanding vaccination for children. But right now, Pfizer is the only vaccine for adolescents.
That was a question that I've heard frequently about. Should we give our children and also teens? I think it's Pfizer for the ages 12 to 19, if I'm correct. But what would you say to a parent who's unsure if they would want their child or rather their teen to get Pfizer? What advice would you give? And that's open to the panel.
Lucia, go ahead. Yes. You can go ahead, Margarita.
Thank you.
You were asking.
Thank you. Yes, no, I fully understand that parents would have concerns. This is a new disease, this is a new vaccine, so it makes perfect sense for parents to have questions. However, at this time, what we are trying to do with vaccination campaigns, all countries in our region are trying to do, is protect the most vulnerable. So
Right.
if you want to, if the vaccine is available and it is offered to your child, we recommend that your child take the vaccine because it's not just protecting the child, him or herself, but is also protecting all those around him, his grandparents, his teachers, a classmate who might have some health problem. So it's not just about protecting an individual, it's protecting the community around that individual. So these vaccines, and I'm sure we'll discuss this more in depth as we move forward in our conversation, but these vaccines have been proven to be safe and effective, each one of them. So really, there shouldn't be any concerns for the vaccine itself. And there's many reasons why you would want a child to be vaccinated to protect him or her and the others around him.
I just want to complement a little bit this answer. Even we have this vaccine, the Pfizer, that's the only one which you can apply in adolescents after over 12 years old. It depends on the country that you are and the epidemiological situation, because countries now have to prioritize the high risk groups, and adolescents are not the high risk groups. So maybe countries which have the Pfizer vaccine, they are not vaccinated at this moment, the teenagers, because they are prioritizing this group that, people with comorbidity, people over 6 years old, and these are the priority group that you have to vaccinate it. That's why many countries which have the Pfizer vaccine are not still vaccinating teenagers.
And I would say that the only exception to this is the child, his or herself, has a comorbidity or a chronic disease and therefore is at higher risk for COVID-19. But that is the only exception.
Thank you so much. So we just recently celebrated World Breastfeeding Day. Can pregnant and lactating women be vaccinated?
They should be vaccinated. Actually, we know now that the pregnant woman is a high risk group. So it's proven now, and there are many data that that is safety. So pregnant women should be vaccinated, and also women who are lactating. So because the vaccine is safety for the woman and is safety for the child who is receiving the lactation.
Thank you, Dr. Lucia. I know that in a recent report in one of the countries here in the Caribbean, there was an increase with women who gave birth, whether they or their child died as a result of COVID-19. Is there any data to support why this has happened, or why pregnant or lactating women are more at risk?
So one thing that we can consider is that pregnancy itself is a particular type of comorbidity, in the sense that there are a number of physiological elements that are occurring in the woman's body when she is carrying a child or when she is breastfeeding that puts this person at higher risk of having severe outcomes for COVID-19. So of course, up until December of last year, the world did not have any COVID-19 vaccines. So the only of protection were social distancing or masking. And in many parts of our region, that wasn't really a possibility that everyone could implement fully. This is why you would see a higher rate of mortality among pregnant women, and of course their babies as well. Now that we have the vaccine, there's no need for this high risk situation to continue. Pregnant women can receive the vaccine at any point during their pregnancy. Breastfeeding, aside from being an excellent way of providing nutrition to the baby in and of itself, a pregnant woman also may pass on some of her own antibodies from the COVID-19 vaccine to the baby. And so far, all the studies that have been conducted have showed no problems for the babies themselves. So as Lucia was saying, pregnant women should get the vaccine. It is highly recommended.
Thank you so much. So let's go to our next question. We've heard persons say, but why should I get the vaccine? Vaccinated persons can transfer the infection. Is this true?
Can you repeat, please?
So we've heard persons say that I don't need to get the vaccine because if I get the vaccine, I can still transfer the virus to other persons. Is that true? And is it really true?
Well, it's true, and now we know that vaccinated people can transmit the infection, even if the person is vaccinated. But what's not true is that I'm not going to get vaccinated because I can transmit the disease. I have to be vaccinated to be in my community and my family vaccinated. And if everyone is vaccinated, you are going to decrease the level of the transmissibility of the virus. That's why it's so important. And we are really working on very, very hard with countries in order to reach high coverage, because high coverage are going to maintain the people vaccinated, which is going to help to decrease the transmissibility. But yes, it's true that person vaccinated can transmit the virus. That's why we have been saying very, very strongly that vaccine is one of our tools against this disease. You have to wear masks, you have to wash hands, you have to avoid crowds and keep the distance, even if you are vaccinated, because all of these tools, the vaccine and these other non-pharmaceutical tools, these all together will reach the point that we are going to finish with this pandemic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucia. I'll open this question to both you, Dr. Lucia and Dr. Margarita. There was a question we had on social media, and it asked, how much of a risk can vaccinated people still be to others? So we understand that, yes, the virus, it is possible for the virus to be passed on even by vaccinated. But do we know what percentage of a risk that would be?
No, we don't know. We have a lot of studies going on at this moment, but we still don't have answer for this question. Actually, it's important to say that we still don't have answer for many questions because we have a vaccine which is very new. We have 8 months, a vaccine which started to be used in December 2020, and we have a new disease which we have just a year and a half. So everything is very new, right? Science is going very fast, but even very fast, we still have many things that we have to learn about the disease and the vaccines.
Right. So I want to go back to what you mentioned, Dr. Lucia. We say that the vaccine is new, but is the vaccine really new? Because based on the fact that we've used the information from incidents with SARS and MERS previously. So is the vaccine really new?
Great.
Or is it like an improved vaccine?
The vaccine is new. The platforms that the vaccine were developed are not new because they were used for many other kinds of vaccines in the past. All the platforms that are in place nowadays. The vaccine is new because the first COVID vaccine we had in November 2020. But the platforms that they were developed are very, very old, and platforms that were used for other vaccines, so very well known by the scientists.
Thank you so much. Dr. Margarita, would you care to interject, add something to that?
Yes, no, thank you so much, Lucia. The main point is that the vaccine is new, the context is new, but the technology for these vaccines is not new. So many are concerned that the vaccine is brand new, the technology is new, we don't know enough about it yet, and therefore it may not be a good time now to receive the vaccine. This is a good time to receive the vaccine. As we said, the technology is not new. It has been tested before through a number of clinical studies. It has been proven in the real world to have good effect. Now we have 8 months worth of data on billions of people who have received this vaccine. We really are gathering more and more data every day to show that these vaccines are safe and effective. And it's not just we test their effectiveness before they start being used, but we continue to test their effectiveness and safety throughout our time, even now, just to make sure that things are working exactly the way they should. This is studies that all countries in the world are supporting. The WHO and PAHO are strongly encouraging and supporting. We obtain more data every day to show that these vaccines are safe and effective for pretty much everyone.
Just to put a number in the billion, today we have more than 4.2 billion doses of these vaccines applied around the world.
Wow.
So
that's 780 million in our region alone.
Wow, that's excellent. So we have a question from Andrew, who is live on our Facebook page. Hi, Andrew. His question is, why are you vaccinating persons that are COVID recovered? So why are we vaccinating persons that have recovered from COVID?
Well, I'm going to start, Margarita, and then you can compliment me. Something that's very important, it's we know that the antibodies at some point they start to decrease. We don't know exactly regarding this vaccine and this disease when the antibodies really disappear or decrease at levels that they're not going to protect anymore. So we know, for example, that 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, we still have antibodies if you had the disease, the COVID infection, the disease or just the infection. But because because we are in a moment where it's still the supply of the vaccines, it's not enough for vaccinating everyone that you want to vaccinate. Countries are establishing some kind of rules, and it's important in each country to follow the rule of the country. It means that someone had COVID. In some countries, they are saying after 2 months of you recovered, you can receive your first dose of vaccine. And this first dose is gonna work like a booster the antibody is gonna go super high when they receive the vaccine. Another countries after 6 months. So it's important to follow the rules of the countries because everything is very related to the supply of the vaccine available in the country.
Right. And I just wanted to remind everyone that the very first person in the world who received the COVID-19 vaccine did so in December 2020. So even at best, the first vaccinated person only has 9 months of testing to be done. And so this is why there are still so many questions about the length of the immunity that we just don't know. And this is something that, again, we are learning more every day, but the first person was vaccinated in December. It's really not that long ago, even though it feels like it.
That is very true. So we have a comment from Carol Simone. Carol Simon. Hi, Carol. She stated that persons are a bit skeptical because I guess some of the vaccines, she didn't specify which vaccines, haven't been approved by the WHO. She says that she thinks when more vaccines are approved, more persons will take it. What suggestions would you make to persons who are still unsure which vaccines they want to take? Because we have so many vaccines available now. What suggestion would you make to those persons who will, who's looking at the vaccine market to see which vaccine they should take?
Well, I can start here and then Lucia will compliment me, I'm sure. First of all, the best vaccine is the one available to you. Exactly. That is the main message that we want to underscore. All vaccines have been reviewed by the WHO, and for certain, any vaccine currently in use has been reviewed by the experts of your country. So none of these vaccines have been allowed to be used in any country without these thorough reviews having taken place before. Now, some Right, some vaccines have not been approved by the WHO, and that is simply because the manufacturers of the vaccine have not yet presented the complete results of their clinical studies to the WHO, so that an independent panel of experts can review and then make a recommendation to WHO to provide the approval for these vaccines. So it's not that some vaccines have not received WHO approval because they're bad. It's simply that the manufacturers have not presented the complete set of data yet. Many vaccines have started to be used, like Sinovac or Sinopharm, and then received WHO approval, and they continue to be used just the same. But even at the very start, these vaccines had been evaluated by the countries in which they are being used. So again, no vaccine is allowed to be used in a population without experts reviewing the data from the vaccine manufacturers. Lucia?
Yeah, just to complement that, every country has a national authority which is the organ which analyze all the medicines, including the vaccine. So if a vaccine is using in a country, it's because the national regulatory authority have reviewed all the documentation and all the papers and data that the manufacturer presented. And another thing that I think it's important, all of these vaccines, they had a preclinical data, and then they have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So these vaccines were studied for a long time, or at least more than a year. So Margarita said very well that it is going to be during the time that WHO will approve one by one. But it doesn't mean that they are bad vaccines, no.
Exactly. Actually, there are currently 294 vaccines, candidate vaccines, the WHO is monitoring, and about 108 of those are in clinical phase, while the rest are in preclinical phase. So this is just to say the number of vaccine candidates that are being developed right now. And once they are ready, they will be submitted to WHO for review and approval. So it's not that because they're a bad vaccine that they have not yet produced data.
Exactly.
There are different timelines with different platforms, different technologies, and we, again, continue to learn every day. But there are many other vaccines that are going to be coming online.
That's true. Thank you so much, both Dr. Margarita and Dr. Lucia. For persons just participate for joining us, we encourage you to share the stream, post your questions. You have your questions asked live, and we're here talking about COVID-19 vaccines. So whatever question you have, please post it, and we're here to discuss. We're here to learn and to share the information. We have to cut down the misinformation that we see in social media. So it's our duty to learn from the experts and share our knowledge. So we have another question. What is the recommendation about mixing vaccine brands? Now I've heard persons, they're not interested. Let me stick with the one that I received before, but not straying from that.
Well, this question is very, it's interesting. It's a very common question, no? And people are answering, questioning these kind of things. Nowadays, there are non-recommendations from WHO or from the Committee of Immunization in WHO called SAGE, in order to mix vaccines, because you do not have data that allow us to say that using this vaccine and this vaccine, I'm gonna be protect against the disease. Mm-hmm. What we know is using this vaccine and this same vaccine for the second dose, I'm gonna be protected. And if you use this one and the second dose of this one, I'm gonna be protected. There is no data. And when it is no data, we can't recommend anything. Right. Probably in the future, in, I don't know, in maybe in 2 years, we can have some information about this, because it happened some programmatic errors that one person received one vaccine and another vaccine, and then you are going to have that data, then you can analyze. But nowadays, there is no data. And the recommendation is you have to finish your schedule with the vaccine that you started the schedule. And of course, the vaccine, the only vaccine that you have with one dose was a Johnson & Johnson, you are going to receive just this one.
And then I would add to what Lucia just said is that it's not only that we are missing data on the effectiveness of this vaccine, we're also of this mixed combination doses, we're also missing data on the safety of these combinations.
Right.
We really don't
Yeah.
know what the outcome may be. We've heard about consequences of the vaccines, and we've seen that so far the adverse risks have been very, very small. But when we start mixing vaccines without any sort of clinical trial behind them, we really don't know and cannot predict what the outcomes may be. So it may not only be ineffective, it may also be dangerous.
I'm piggybacking on what both of you spoke about. There's a question that came through that talked about the negative side effects in the long term. How are we certain that these vaccines won't have negative side effects in the long term? What would you say to someone who asked such a question?
I think you can repeat the same thing that Margarita and I said before, because these vaccines were developed in platforms, in technologies very well known. So there is no reason to think that this vaccine will have some kind of side effects in a long term, because other vaccines that were developed in the same platforms with the same technology, we know that we do not have any vaccine, all the vaccines that we have in the world, that they have side effects in the long term. So we don't know, we don't have any chance that these vaccines are going to have, because they are exactly like the others that were developed.
Right. And remember, again, 4.2 billion doses
exactly.
in the last 8 months. And so far, no signs of long-term negative effects from these vaccines.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Blaze. It says, in my country, it states that COVID positive patients cannot take the vaccine until 3 months have passed. In the UK, I heard it was 28 days. Why is there a difference?
I can try with this one if you
Okay.
don't. So from a biological point of view, a person can receive the COVID-19 vaccines as soon as he or she is feeling better. No more fever, no more cough. They're no longer infectious to others from a purely biological point of view. However, as Lucia said, there are some pretty serious limitations on the number of vaccines available at this time. So some countries may decide to rely on the immunity that the disease has given a person for a little while longer, and then give them the vaccine. Now, and because this is a decision of a country, each country can decide what that interval is going to be. But from a biological point of view, you can receive the vaccine immediately after the disease. And then up to 6 months, again, based on what we know so far, you can postpone the vaccination according to the directives of your country. But that's why the durations can be different, because each country has a different kind of supply of vaccine. Sorry, Lucia, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. No, and also as complementing what you said, the biological point of view, this person who had the COVID, he has the antibodies, we know, at least 6 months. So this person is not going to get the disease again, because this person is protected with the antibodies that were created against the disease. So this person can wait more time to get the vaccine.
However, as soon as the vaccine is offered.
Yes, of course.
Okay, we have a question from Adrian. Hello, Adrian. How soon after receiving another vaccine, let's say for tetanus, meningitis, or hepatitis, influenza, can one commence or continue taking their COVID-19 vaccines?
14 days.
14
This is the recommendation from all the vaccines related to COVID. I mean, the COVID vaccine, independent of the other vaccine, is going to be meningitis, HPV, influenza, shingles, whatever, you have to wait 14 days between the COVID and the other one, or the other one and COVID.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Carol. Carol is asking, would it be a case where the vaccine might have to be taken every 6 months or a year since boosters are now recommended?
Well, boosters right now are not recommended. Actually, the WHO published 2 days ago a communication exactly on this topic, saying that to date, there are no available data to support the use of a booster dose, unless the person is immunocompromised. Then that becomes a completely different situation. But for people in the general population with no specific diseases, whose immune system works fine, there is no proof that a booster dose does work. So in this situation, once again, we don't know how long it would take for the immunity to wane, because once again, we've only been doing this for 8-9 months. And so far, our immune systems seem to be holding up quite well. So we will need to have additional time pass just to see what the immunity of our body continues to do when it starts to wane. And that will be the point where we start talking about booster doses for the population. I will also say that this is a topic that is being discussed by all the international organizations and ministries of health, certainly of our region, possibly the world. It's a topic very much of the forefront of everyone's mind. Data are being monitored very carefully. And so once enough data are available to make a recommendation on booster doses, that's when the WHO will make one.
And also, Margarita, we have to be aware that we are still in a situation where the supply of the vaccine is not enough for the population who really need to receive this vaccine, and around the world. If you look at the maps in the countries about coverage against COVID vaccine coverage, it's terrible. For example, when you see that Africa has then less than 10% of coverage in the population which needs to receive the vaccine. So how we are going to start to talk about booster, 3 doses, when we still have a lot of people who need to receive this vaccine?
That's true.
Just to put it in context, low-income countries have received 0.3% of all vaccines to date, about from that 4.2 billion. This, again, is just to put you in context how some countries are talking about a booster dose and other countries have yet not vaccinated all of their healthcare workers, who are the first ones on the front lines and most at risk.
This is a huge inequity in public health, and we are always very worried about that.
Our director, the PAHO director, Director Carissa Etienne, she just said just yesterday in her report, she talked about the importance of high-income countries and assisting the low-income countries to get the vaccinations that they need. Particularly when we look here in Latin America and the Caribbean, we know that our numbers are low. And as it was mentioned, our healthcare workers, they need it. They're on the front line. They're risking their lives every day. And we say a special thank you to each and every frontline worker who's here, every responder, every person who makes some contributions to help keep us safe. And let's go back to the questions. We have some more questions. Would the vaccine affect endometriosis patients?
No, there is absolutely no evidence that people with comorbidities like diabetes, endometriosis, different types of cancer, obesity, or any of these other serious medical conditions would have any restrictions in receiving the vaccine. In fact, their conditions makes them more vulnerable to the COVID-19. So in discussion with their doctors, obviously, because each patient is different, but we highly recommend that people who already have a chronic disease consider receiving the COVID-19 vaccines as soon as possible. Indeed, many countries prioritize these people to receive the vaccine ahead of the general population because of their increased risk.
We have another, thank you so much, Dr. Margarita. We have another statement and question. I had COVID-19 1 year ago, and I tested positive for the antibodies 2 weeks ago. Do I need to take the vaccine?
Yes, you need to take the vaccine. Everyone needs to take the vaccine. If you are in the group of population in your country that you are selected, the group selected for the vaccination. And I think we talked about this a little at the beginning of our conversation, and we don't know how many months the antibodies stay in your body in the levels that you need for protecting against the disease. So 1 year, we don't know because we don't have information about that. So you should get the vaccine.
And at worst, the vaccine is a booster to your immune system.
Exactly, yeah. You are gonna be much more protected.
Thank you so much. We have another statement. I think this person needs a little assistance with understanding. It says that, is it that we don't have enough information, we don't have enough vaccines because it is still an experimental stage?
No. The 6 vaccines that WHO has approved to date, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Janssen, Sinovac, and Sinopharm, have all been extensively tested for both effectiveness and safety, and are safe and to use in the population. The limits of supplies is caused by 2 factors. One is the entire world wants COVID-19 vaccines at the exact same time. Yeah. So manufacturing is just not able to keep up with this massive demand at one time. That is one thing to keep in mind. Secondly, many high-income countries were able to purchase vaccine doses even before these vaccines existed, almost, when they were still in the very first stages of development. And so with head start, many high-income countries were able to buy vaccines immediately as soon as they were approved and were out the gates. So that's why right now there is this limitation on supply. Now, many high-income countries have started donating very high quantities of vaccine doses to the WHO through the COVAX mechanism, or making bilateral donations to individual countries. So that's how many vaccines are in circulation right now. And then starting in September and October, mass production will finally kick in, because we will have enough production sites and enough vaccines being approved that there will be a much higher availability of vaccines for all the countries in the world. But the fact that every single country in the world started wanting this product at the exact same time obviously caused huge backlogs.
And as you said, we have been grateful for those countries that have made the various contributions to help us. At the end of the day, we're all about public health, public safety. And we want to remind everyone to do their part, always, to protect yourselves and protect those in the community. Get your vaccine. Continue to participate in forums like this, where we have the discussion, where you get the facts and share the facts. Wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance, stay at home, and not invite other persons into your home. All right, so let's go back to some more questions. We have a question here from Tony. Is there a particular vaccine that is recommended for persons living with HIV?
Well, I'm gonna repeat what Margarita said some minutes ago. The best vaccine is the vaccine available. So if your country are using vaccine A, B, or X, you use the vaccine that your country are offering to you, because all of these vaccines that were approved by WHO, they all good vaccines. They all vaccines which prevent what you want to prevent, which is hospitalization, severe disease, and death. All of these vaccines. So get the vaccine that your country is offering. There is no better vaccine.
Right. And to add, there have been a number of studies done, especially for people living with HIV. And the results show that if their CD4 counts are high, if they're taking their antiretroviral therapies, these vaccines work exactly the same as HIV negative people. The only exception would be if if the HIV positive person is severely immunocompromised. So the ART regimen is not working, and that's where this person should speak with his or her physician to see what the options are. But if CD4 counts are high, antiretroviral therapy is going well, there is absolutely no reason why people shouldn't receive the vaccine and expect the exact same benefits as anyone else.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Angela. Can the AstraZeneca vaccine affect a person with gallstones?
No, no. You know, I'd like to give, vaccines are very related, unfortunately, with adverse events. So you receive the vaccine today, and tomorrow you fall in the street and break your head, you say that was the vaccine because you were dizzy and you couldn't see the cars, and then so the fault is the vaccine. I'm joking about that, but it's true. People related everything what happens after the vaccination as an adverse event of the vaccine. And most of the time, I would say like 99% of the time are events coincidental related with the vaccine because they happened after the vaccination. Mm-hmm. We know that there are some adverse events, and they are very well monitored at this time with for PAHO, WHO, and all the agencies in the countries, but they are very rare, very, 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 very rare. So we have to understand that not all the things that happen after the vaccination is the fault of the vaccine. The poor vaccine, the vaccine is so good. He's gonna protect you against the disease. This vaccine is not gonna give you another disease.
Thank you so much. We have another question about donating blood. Can I donate blood after receiving the vaccine?
So it is recommended that you wait about 14 days again before donating blood. If you have been taking some sort of treatment for COVID-19, like monoclonal antibodies or other treatments of the sort, then you might want to ask your physician, but the recommendation is to wait about 6 months in that situation. However, for other people who have just received the vaccine, maybe wait 14 days and then you can resume.
Thank you, Dr. Margarita. We have another question about vaccines and blood clots. Can you give some advice on that?
If you don't mind, I'll start because was
okay.
one of my...
Yes.
Thank you. So this is actually ties in very well with the conversations we were just having about the adverse events, the outcomes that are always associated with vaccines, even though they may not be. Now, as we said in the beginning, vaccines are assessed for safety in a very rigorous manner before they are approved. But the safety monitoring continues well after the vaccine is being used in the population. This means that each country in the world is continuously collecting data on any kind of these adverse events that happen after vaccination, even if it is falling on the street, just to make sure that we understand completely anything that might happen after a person receives this vaccine. So in the case of AstraZeneca and thrombosis, and the proper term is thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, which we abbreviate as TTS. In that sense, that's when the vaccines AstraZeneca and Janssen in the United States were paused, just to give researchers more time to collect all the data, do more in-depth analysis. And in both cases, with both vaccines, the vaccination was continued a few weeks after, because these safety data were analyzed and we found that thrombosis was an extremely rare event. Just to put it into context, we're talking about 4 to 6 people every million people vaccinated. So if you consider how many people are affected with COVID in your neighborhood, and then you think what 4 in 1 million people could be, you immediately see that the vaccines have benefits that far outweigh any concern with thrombosis or any other adverse effect. And once again, there have been other adverse events being discussed in the media, like myocarditis or Guillain-Barré syndrome. For those conditions, there's not even a plausible causal association with the vaccines. It's just things that were picked up by our surveillance systems, and it happened to be after the vaccine, after the second doses were given. So there's still studies ongoing to see if there's a causal relationship. With thrombosis, it does seem there is a plausible causal relationship. But once again, it is such a rare event that it shouldn't really be on anyone's mind when they go get the vaccination. And if you do have serious concerns about it, talk about it with your physician and decide together what is your best strategy. But from a WHO point of view, vaccination is always recommended.
Thank you so much, Dr. Margarita. And it's an important point. Speak to your physician, not your barber, not your mechanic, not your hairstylist. Speak to the physician who would have the experience, who can help you to find what's best for you. And as was repeated over and over, the best vaccine is the vaccine that is available to you. We have another question coming from Gary. Should a person with a lot of medicinal allergies who take aspirin take the vaccine? And let me say that again. Should a person with a lot of allergies to medicines, such as aspirin, take the vaccine?
Yes, there are very well, that's a good description about the only situations that person can't receive a vaccine, and is when the person is allergic to one of the components of the vaccine. So in general, very rare people are allergic to the components of the vaccine. So yes, people allergic can receive the vaccine. Vaccine is one of the medicines, because vaccine is one medicine with less side effects compared with an aspirin, Advil, or whatever. So yes, he can, I think it's he, right? He can receive the vaccine.
And if you are really concerned, what you can do is go get the vaccine in a healthcare facility or where there are physicians who can monitor you and provide any kind of support that you need in the 30 minutes, 1 hour after the vaccination, if it's really a concern for you, which would be very legitimate concern. But that's one way that ensures that you receive the vaccine while receiving also the proper care.
And that's very important. Thank you both. Another question we have as we prepare to wrap up: how can you tell about events after vaccination when there is not enough data on the long-term effects?
Good question. Very good.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Margaret.
Thank you. I'll start. So first of all, because these vaccines are new and they are operating in a new context, because let's remember COVID-19 is a brand new disease, never seen before. Right now, what our surveillance systems are doing, which are in every single country, and the WHO is helping countries build that surveillance system, but what every single country does is record every single medical event that occurred after vaccination. We have no idea if it's associated with the vaccine or not, but we record them all. And then we do statistical analyses to see which outcomes are related to a specific vaccine, if there are any. Many times it turns out there is no association, neither biological nor statistical nor epidemiological. But right now, because we're in this brand new situation, we record every single medical event, even bumping your head in the street. It would be recorded because we just don't know this vaccine in this new context, how it will operate in the real world. So that's how we are able to discuss adverse events, even though we don't know the long-term consequences, because we are learning bit by bit, but we are trying to capture as many data points as we possibly can so that we are able to prepare for any eventuality, really.
Thank you so much. So we have a question from Khan. He's asking, what are your views about countries indirectly mandating vaccinations by creating sanctions like no access to work? Now here in the Caribbean, we've seen that there have been incidences where some persons were not allowed to go into their workplaces because they weren't vaccinated. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, of course, since we started this conversation, the main message here is get your vaccine. So we really believe that you have to get your vaccine in your country. But WHO and Pan American Health Organization, we do not have any recommendation regarding this kind of obligatority of to receive the vaccine, to go to the restaurant, to go to the work, to go to the school, to go to the movies. Each country can have their own rule, respect if they think that someone who don't get the vaccine shouldn't go to work, but this is a country decision. It's not a recommendation from WHO or PAHO. Everyone should receive vaccine, must receive vaccine, because the vaccine with other tools that you mentioned before will finish with this pandemic. If everyone decides that not gonna get the vaccine, we are not gonna finish this pandemic, never, never and ever. And we are gonna continue having this virus circulating and circulating and mutating with new variants and new variants and new variants. That's why the vaccination is so important. But at the end of the day, this is a decision of the country, if they are gonna allow or not someone to go to work if he's not vaccinated.
Absolutely in agreement with Lucia. And just to reiterate on another point that she made extremely important, the more people wait to be vaccinated, the more they do not use social distancing or masking, the more chances we are giving to the virus to mutate and emerge with other variants like the Delta variant or worse. No one ever said that the Delta variant was the absolute worst. There's always worse. So we are just giving the virus more time and chances to mutate, and no one wants that.
No, we do not want that. So again, encourage persons. You've heard it from the experts. Get your vaccine. Encourage your family members, your friends, your co-workers, get the vaccine. Do the proper research. You can always access our website, www.paho.org/en, or you can check out our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. We're on every social media platform, English and Spanish, and also French and Creole. So if you have questions, get the facts. Get the facts. We are here to assist you in every way. And before you prepare your final thoughts, Dr. Lucia, Dr. Margarita, I have one more question. There's still questions about the impact of persons who take the vaccine, particularly women, receiving the vaccine and having fertility issues in the future. What would your advice be to those persons?
Never vaccine had any effect on a person's fertility, male or female. A vaccine with these kinds of issues would not be approved, period.
Exactly.
We see a comment here from Kim stating that persons are getting vaccinated and the mutation is still occurring. And it goes right back to what Dr. Lucia and Dr. Margarita said. Would you care to comment on that quickly?
Well, I think we said before, but the virus is very smart and the virus wants to survive. So more we give a chance for the virus to be circulating and to be among people and going from one country to another country, more this virus is gonna change in order to survive, because this is a natural from the virus. So the only thing that we can do, and it's gonna work, is all the tools together: the vaccination, the mask, the hand wash, the social distance, and avoid crowding. This situation is gonna be like the virus gonna be without chance to circulate and replicate and mutate. This is the only thing that's gonna happen. If you leave what's going to happen now, for example, some countries where people are, they have a high coverage of vaccination, they started with another kind of peaks of the outbreak again, because people relaxed and they are not using masks, they are not avoiding crowds. So the virus, we know now that the people vaccinated can transmit the disease. So the virus is trying to survive, and it depends of us, just of us, to avoid that this virus continue surviving and mutating.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucia. We have two more quick questions. Richard is asking, is COVID-19 a virus or a disease? And diseases are curable, but viruses are not. Can you clarify?
Of course. COVID-19 is the disease. Coronavirus disease 2019, because this disease was first reported to the WHO on the 31st of December, 2019. The virus is SARS-CoV-2, COVID as in COVID virus, it is as in coronavirus. So that's the virus that is circulating, and COVID-19 is the disease. A person can have the virus, I can be infected with the virus and yet be completely asymptomatic, no fever, no sneezing, no coughing, I'm perfectly fine. So I don't have any signs and symptoms of the disease COVID-19, but I definitely have the virus SARS-CoV-2.
Thank you for that. And we have a question about natural immunity. Doesn't natural immunity allow the ball of the virus to give full immunity versus receiving a spike-created vaccine?
I don't understand exactly the question. Do you, Margarita?
Let me see if I can. Try.
I don't know if the person is talking about herd immunity, because
Natural, a lot of bad.
I can see here.
So doesn't natural. Okay, so let's talk about you
think
got it, Dr. Margarita?
I think I do. It's natural immunity, meaning the immunity created by the virus versus the immunity created by
the vaccine.
By the vaccine.
Okay.
It's not, they are not in competition. One just boosts the other, and it's much better to have immunity from the vaccine, because then you can skip all the bad stuff associated with the disease itself, but you get the same benefits. So they are not in competition. One does not beat out the other. It's simply that if you have the chance, get the vaccine before you get the disease. It's just much easier for you.
And also, the virus, what we don't know is what the consequence of this virus in the long term. Yep. We know that many people 6 months later still have problems, and sometimes very serious problems with the virus, but it doesn't happen with the vaccine. So choose always the vaccine, not the disease.
Definitely. And again, we want to say a special thank you to Dr. Lucia and Dr. Margarita for such an informative session today. And we ask that you continue to share it, share the stream, share the accurate information. We want to ensure that people have the information. We have to dispel the misinformation. We want to build confidence, because the vaccine is one of the key elements that we need to get rid of COVID-19. And again, I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Lucia, to Dr. Margarita, to the entire tech team, and of course to you, our audience. It's always a pleasure to be in this space with you. And again, visit our social media websites or visit our website at www.paho.org/en. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.